On this day, August 27, 66 years ago, at this very place, an event known as Axe Handle Saturday took place in Jacksonville. In that building behind me, which is now City Hall, was the segregated lunch counter of a department store. And on August 27, 1960, members of the NAACP Youth Council in Jacksonville staged a sit-in. You see, they were welcome to spend their money at the department store, but they were not welcome to eat there with the white patrons. And on that corner, where today a historical marker was unveiled to commemorate the event 66 years ago, the Ku Klux Klan distributed axe handles, and a mob of whites began beating upon the youth activists and any other African American citizens that they could find in the area on the street. This was known as Axe Handle Saturday, and today, August 27, 2026, a marker has gone up at the corner. It's that green sign down there you can see in the background with all the people around it. That marker commemorates the events of Axe Handle Saturday. It is not a celebration, it is a commemoration. And the building, again behind me, was where the segregated lunch counter was. Jacksonville has an amazing Black history story to tell that includes James Weldon Johnson, the author of Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem. It includes Harlem Renaissance sculptor Augusta Savage. It includes labor leader A. Philip Randolph, who was instrumental in the March on Washington for jobs and peace. The March on Washington was a labor movement. It includes Abraham Lincoln Lewis, perhaps Florida's first black millionaire, who would go on to found American Beach up where I live in Amelia Island. Amelia Island also has a great African American Black history story to tell that begins at American Beach. But it is also an ugly history, including a port where the enslaved were let out in Old Town. Between Jacksonville and Amelia Island is a place called Kingsley Plantation. And you can still visit historic slave quarters there today. Powerful, powerful site. South of Jacksonville, St. Augustine perhaps has the most extraordinary Black history story of them all, including Fort Mose, the first settlement of free Black people in what would become the United States of America. Let me run that back for you. Fort Mose, 2 miles north of downtown St. Augustine, the historic district, is the site of the first community, the first settlement of free Black people in what would become the United States. St. Augustine also has the Munson Motor Lodge, where the proprietor poured acid into the pool as Black people and protesters waded in to bring attention to that hotel's segregation policy. It has the steps where Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested. St. Augustine, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, was the most wide open, lawless place he had ever been to. This was in 1964. And he'd been to Montgomery and Selma and Jackson, Mississippi. But St. Augustine was the most lawless, according to him. In fact, Martin Luther King Jr. was in St. Augustine, was in Florida, when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was finally signed into law by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Martin Luther King, when his life's work became law, was in Florida, St. Augustine, Florida. St. Augustine, well, Augustine also had a a market for the sale of enslaved people. You can still see that there. St. Augustine, Fort Mose, Jacksonville, Kingsley Plantation, American Beach, Amelia Island. This is one of the most profound and rich areas of Black history in the United States. But you may not know that, and I didn't know that even after I moved here, because this history is purposefully suppressed. This history is purposely suppressed by villains like the one I am running against for State House in District 15, Dean Black, who counts as his primary achievements and motivations and inspirations in public service, quote unquote, to be suppressing Black history, erasing Black history, upholding white supremacy, upholding white nationalism, and defending Confederate monuments. Dean Black is a dangerous radical with a debased vision for Northeast Florida, for the state of Florida, for the United States, that seeks to take us back to Axe Handle Saturday and an era of racial terror, violence, an era of racial inequality, an era where all men were not created equal. And that's the work that he does in the state legislature. Gerrymandering districts to diminish African American and Black political power, defending Confederate monuments, suppressing Black history. That is the work of Dean Black, a dangerous radical. And that is why I, in part, am running for State House in District 15, to obliterate that vision for Florida and America and replace it with a vision that celebrates A. Philip Randolph, that celebrates Augusta Savage and James Weldon Johnson and Abraham Lincoln Lewis, that celebrates Black achievement and Black history, that makes voting and education equal for all.